Good afternoon. I'll call this General Services Public Works Committee meeting to order. Today is April 10th, and it is noon in the Library Community Room. With us today, we have Councilmember McEvers filling in for Councilmember Wood. Welcome.
Thank you.
We have, 5 items on the agenda today, and 4 of them are going to be presented by our city engineer, Chris Bosley. And so, Chris, welcome. Our first item is requesting approval of a leading Idaho sub-award agreement with the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ, for the East Sherman Stormwater Outfall Volume Reduction Project.
Thank you, council members, for having me before you today. Yes, my first item is in regards to the Leading Idaho award. If you remember, we were awarded 3 separate projects last year: the Sanders Beach project, Independence Point project, and the East Mullen project. The goal of each of those was to divert stormwater into alternative storage and treatment devices, and thereby reducing the amount of phosphorus that goes into our lake. After we were awarded those 3 projects last year, another call for proposals came out. We submitted one more, and we were awarded $190,000 for East Sherman. There's an outfall right by I-90 at the end of East Sherman, and it's a pretty small drainage area, but we feel that $190,000 will get us through design and construction to take that outfall offline the best we can as well. So I'm asking you to approve this sub-award with DEQ for the $190,000.
Fantastic. Any questions?
I have one.
Well, is that a map still spinning up, or
Yeah,
exactly?
it's not
where where does it go out? Like
So
under the
where
freeway?
East Sherman connects or goes
Oh.
underneath I-90,
Right.
right there, there's a borrow ditch that runs along I-90,
Yeah.
and that makes its way down to Fernan Creek and
Oh, to the-
into
okay.
Lake Coeur d'Alene. So right there by East Sherman is where we plan to put in some sort of devices to handle the stormwater, clean it, and divert it from going into the outfall.
Great.
All right. I got nothing. I'd like to make a motion to recommend council approve the Leading Idaho Sub-Award Agreement with Idaho DEQ for East Sherman Stormwater Outfall Volume Reduction Project, which provides the city up to $190,000 in state funds.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Fantastic work, Chris. Thank you.
you.
Yeah.
Item number 2, we have a request of acceptance of a bid and award a contract to Stewart Contracting Incorporated for the construction of the 11th Street Stormwater Project in the amount not to exceed $274,625.
Thank you. Yes, this is the Sanders Beach outfall project that I just mentioned. It was also funded by DEQ's Leading Idaho Initiative Sub-Award, and we went out to bid last month on this one, and we got 5 bids, with the lowest coming from Stewart Contracting Incorporated, and so I am requesting your approval to award that bid, that contract to them, so they can start construction this spring on that outfall removal, or not removal, but diverting the water from the outfall. Now I would stand for any questions.
Well, and is that about the price you hoped for, estimated, or?
Yes, I would have been the second bidder, so I'm pretty
Okay.
happy with that. Yes.
Okay, okay. So, well, I know a lot of things are costing more, but.
Yes.
Yep, okay. Well, then, otherwise,
I have a
would-
question
okay,
quickly.
Yep.
Can you compare how much acres of water this one is compared to Kathleen? Is there some similar size?
No, this one is much larger. The Kathleen project we did only took the stormwater from that general Kathleen area between 95 and Government Way. This one, I think, is 76 acres, so it's quite substantial in size.
The other question was, it going to be a milk crate project similar to Kathleen?
No, actually, on this one, we've come up, well, our consultant has come up with a new way of reducing the costs on that. Instead of using these R tanks, the milk crate looking objects, we're going to go with dry wells, but treat them like R tanks and put a sand compost filter bed around them to help clean the stormwater as it comes into them. We chose the dry wells because all contractors around here pretty much are familiar with working with dry wells, not so many with R tanks. So by making this slight change to the dry wells, we felt like we would get better bids on it, and I assume we were successful this time.
So dry wells, is there a maintenance program for dry wells as compared to the R tanks?
It would be very similar. We would go in with a jet truck and clean those out whenever needed.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Well, then I would make a motion to recommend that council accept the bid and award a contract to Stewart Contracting for the construction of the 11th Street Stormwater Project in an amount not to exceed $674,625.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3 on the agenda, request approval for staff to seek additional funding in the amount of $668,000 through the Leading Idaho Subaward Agreement with the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality for the Independence Point Stormwater Outfall Volume Reduction Project. Those are mouthfuls.
Yes.
Stumbling
I couldn't
over 'em.
make it any simpler, sorry. So my request on this one is to make a request to DEQ for additional funding for the Independence Point Outfall Project. So in the first round where we got the Sanders Beach, which was the 11th Street one that you just approved, the consultant changed the name during bidding, or right before they bid it, so it's a little confusing there, but so that project, the East Mullen project, and the Independence Point project were all awarded at the same time. The Independence Point project, which is, I believe, 115 acres of urban stormwater area, the idea was to put that into some sort of R tanks or similar thing near the water at the lowest point of the drainage area, but unfortunately the groundwater level is so high around Independence Point that it made that idea infeasible. So the consultant had to do a little extra work and try to figure out different ways to handle this, and so they came up with a way of treating at least a good portion of the drainage area by putting in dry wells or R tanks, similar to the other projects. But with that, it's going to cost more money than we originally intended it to cost. And so DEQ has some money left in the original call. They had $2 million for that original group of projects. Some projects have dropped out of their project funding since then. And so there's approximately $668,000 left that could be claimed by the city of Coeur d'Alene. So in speaking with DEQ, they said, just ask for it all, and whatever we give you, they'll give us. Or whatever they can manage to. So with that, we would have a much better chance at getting a competitive bid and being able to take care of the Independence Point area.
I have a quick question on this one.
Yep.
So I'm understanding correctly, 668,000 is available from DEQ potentially.
Correct.
By asking for those dollars on top of our 350,000, we're optimistic that that would cover the project.
Well, it's going to cover at least, what we're looking at is the northern half of the project. So the project, the consultant broke it into two pieces, with a northern portion that goes well up Government Way from downtown and a southern portion that's more near Independence Point. That southern portion, they were looking at having to pipe that water somewhere else, which became really expensive. But the northern portion, with some small changes in the pipe system, we can capture all of that water and not, and at a reasonable cost.
Okay, thank you. Woody?
Just a couple of them. When you said piping stormwater, isn't there stormwater pipes down in there?
There are, yes.
Northwest
Yes,
Boulevard?
and that was the really expensive option that we were looking at, was grabbing one of those storm pipes and then piping it over to near the skate park area. But it was a lot of pipe. It's a significant size pipe, and it would have been very expensive to do. It would have been like another $1 million for that portion of it. So we're just happy to be able to handle what we can.
Gotcha. So this isn't going to take all that water, the 115 acres is not going to.
Correct.
You're going to get
Approximately half of that.
half. And the consultant, who, is that paid for in here? The guy who draws up the designs and thinks about this?
Yes, that is all being funded by the grant. That was funded by the $350,000.
Okay. And dry wells again?
Most likely, yes.
Okay. Thank you. I'd like to move, if I could, to recommend council approve the request for staff to seek additional funding in the amount of $668,000 through the Leading Idaho Sub-Award Agreement and with Idaho DEQ for the Independence Point Stormwater Outfall Volume Reduction Project.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4, request approval to enter into a state-local agreement for the Rectangular Rapid Flashing Beacons, RRFB project. Chris, you're up again.
All right.
I
So
Chris, if you'd like to restart your program, let's see if we can get a link.
all right. I don't know if I'll need to point at this, but if you have any questions, then I can certainly point out to it now. Because this one's kind of spread all over. This one does have a little simpler name for approval this time than the previous 3. But this is the pedestrian safety project that you approved previously through the local Highway Technical Assistance Council. And this was to fund 7 different locations for rectangular rapid flashing beacons to help pedestrians cross the streets. That went to design last year, and we worked through all of that, got the design done, and now it's ready to bid by the state. But to do that, we have to sign this agreement with them for funding and moving into that. Well, I'll have to come back with another agreement with when a contractor is, when the bids come in. But this gets us to the next step. We've done this on other projects with LTAC in the past. And this one is funding 7 RRFB locations. One of them actually, we had put in the RRFB early on Best Avenue at 7th for the Bora Elementary School that's right there. We didn't want to wait for the grant because they were needing some safety improvements there sooner. So instead of funding that RRFB, it is actually going to be funding sidewalk along the north side to get students over to that crossing location. The other locations are at Hanley and Madeline. We've had an ask for that location in the past. Another one by the Maverick Station on Hanley, going from Lake City High School, because so many kids run back and forth across the street there. Coincidentally, I just got a request for safety improvements there last week. So I was able to tell the person that, that we're moving forward with that one. Another is at Howard and Bosanko, so that's behind the Fred Meyer there at the top of the hill when you come up Howard from Kathleen. We've got 3 on Riverstone Drive, one by Bardnay, one at BB Boulevard, and one at the Centennial Trail crossing. And with that one, we had decided that if funds became tight on that one, we could reduce 1 or 2 of those and still effectively cover the city with these. So with that, I would stand for any questions.
Woody?
So is the funding going to cover all this, or are you waiting to see what the bids are? Is there going to balance things?
Yes. We won't know until it's bid. We did get an estimate from the consultant when they were putting this together. We think that might be a little tight, but we have some additional funding that we could contribute to it if we need to, just to make sure that we get all these improvements done.
But not out of the overlay budget, right?
I would, wherever that money comes from, it would need your approval.
Okay. He's so diplomatic.
Yeah.
One other question. So are these solar?
Yes.
So how are we doing on solar?
We've had to replace a couple batteries this year because the solar charges a battery and they'll only last 5 to 7 years or whatever that length is. We've only got one in town that is actually wired into electricity, and that's by the hospital right there on Ironwood, near 95. We thought that one might get pushed enough that solar might not cover that one, but the rest of them seem to be doing pretty well.
All right, thank you.
And is his funding chances likely to come up year after year? You mentioned that this kind of covers the city, but I assume there's a whole lot more places. It'd be nice to have them, but.
Yeah, we actually, a few years ago, we had a similar grant where we purchased a bunch of these and we installed them ourselves. This one goes a step further in having a contractor install them. But this funding comes up quite a bit, so we'll be looking for the next opportunity.
It just seems like a pretty cost-effective but worthwhile safety measure. So
Yeah, I agree.
I would think it wouldn't be too hard if we needed to, fundraising and naming rights or something. But anyway, let's hope we keep getting grants. So I would then make a motion to recommend that council approve entering into a state-local agreement for the rectangular rapid flashing beacon project.
Second.
Any further discussion? I'll just add and echo what Dan said. I just think these are fantastic. I know the Bike Ped committee are huge advocates of these as well, so thank you for all your work on this.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Item number 5 we have with us today Captain Dave Hagar. Request approval of a change request by Coeur. Is it Coeur or C-O-R-E?
Coeur, yeah.
Coeur Construction to increase the contract amount by $40,000 for additional CMGC pre-construction services related to the police department remodel expansion project.
Hopefully
Welcome.
that is not the entire title for this thing.
I know, they're challenging us today.
No
with
kidding.
these.
I come before you today. As you recall, this has been an ongoing process with our building. We engaged Coeur in the CMGC, the construction manager general contractor process, over a year ago, March of 2022. They assisted us in selecting our architect for design services. The initial pre-construction contract was for $40,000. They have been heavily engaged in our process with our architect. To kind of give you some square footage ideas, the first concept that came out from our architect, we were only going to have about 3,800 square feet of new build. By having the CMGC there, the way things kind of had traditionally been done, the architect comes up with something, then it goes out for bid, and then you realize, oh my gosh, we're way over bid. By having the construction manager in the process with us, they have suggested alternative design and build features, construction materials They have ongoing processes in North Idaho, so they understand what the labor market looks like. And we are now at about 5,300 square feet of new build, plus an additional about 1,600 square feet of basically what we're going to be able to reconstitute inside the building once we move the locker rooms over. And I was contacted by our team at Coeur and their supervisors and said, hey, we've been engaged for a little over a year. This is a little bit longer process. This is hybrid for everybody. And we've already spent this $40,000. We think it's going to take another $40,000 to get there. And putting it in perspective again, we were able to gain about 25% in the square footage because we've had them on board. And again, it's different than some of the typical services. And I think the money that we've already spent is well worth the investment in what we're going to be able to provide for the community and for the city as far as space moving forward. So I would recommend that approval for this additional $40,000 to take us through design services and, well, the construction management until we're there. This afternoon, we have a meeting with the whole team again, and I think we're going to have some fairly firm designs for what our schematic looks like so they can go full blast with what the architecture looks like. We're to that phase. And again, my goal in this whole thing is not to have any change orders once we actually start construction, but to get all of these bugs out of the process before we get there. So it's been walked through, looked through our long lead items. That's one of the supply chain issues for the cabinets that you put your electrical systems in. Those can take anywhere from 6 to 9 months. And so trying to get those things done on the front end so we can put it together. So I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Woody?
So Dave, yeah, this is becoming a big project. So we just went up about 1,500 square feet, right? The difference between the 38 and the 53.
Right.
And that's going to still, you think, will fall into the budget that we have set aside?
I will tell you, every meeting starts out with whatever we decide today, it has to be within our budget. If we have any inkling that we're going to go over the budget, it gets killed, then it comes back down. So that's been my main point this entire time through, is that it will be within budget.
Okay. The other question was, I read through the list of all the things they did that I guess my question is, that wasn't anticipated on their part to do that work? Is that why they need more money?
I think some of it was anticipated, but not to the extent. The original architect, because our building was told to us was designed to be expanded, and it really wasn't. And I think when we initially came to you with this 2 years ago, we'd had kind of a concept that was out there that it could be expanded a certain way. And they came back and said, because of the engineering, you've been in our building, we kind of have the interior quad area that we call it, to try to reclaim that square footage as indoor space is about twice the cost per square foot of actually building new, because the structural engineering and the beams and things. So they had to come in and do a lot more work to figure out what we could and couldn't do with the existing building for what we needed to do, and then working with their sub-consultants and things to get prices. Because again, I think they were planning kind of at a different designing phase, that it would be a little bit more upfront, but we've run into some of those things they've identified and said, that doesn't make sense for this property, so we've had to go some different directions.
Okay. And my last question is, will council see this design before you guys go, yeah, here we go?
Yeah, I think that at least as far as the square footage, we're going to have that, but we'll bring it to you. And again, part of the concept with this is the first phase. This doesn't get us, we have about another 20,000 square feet that's estimated that we have to grow. And so this building itself is going to be on the far western side of that lot, and so we'll kind of build from there. So you're not going to have the most aesthetic vision for a while until it's completed. And that was part of our value in engineering, if you want to call it that. There was kind of a nice structure the architect came out with, and we said, that looks really great if it was going to be the frontage, but we can save a lot of money if we do it a little bit differently, since we're going to add. But yeah, we should be able to get the 3D conceptual designs and the floor plan out to you once we're to that stage.
All right, I look forward
Probably
to
do that through a heads up if that works for you.
Yeah, that'd be nice to see. Thank you.
I think we need to do it. I mean, there's always these kind of changes, and in a building, that's old enough. I'm not surprised that it doesn't always work out as advertised, whatever that was 30 years ago or something when they built it, so.
Yep.
All right. You want to carry that, Dan?
Sure.
Okay.
I would recommend council approve change of request to Coeur Construction to increase the contract amount to $40,000 for additional CMGC pre-construction services related to the police department remodel and expansion project.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I just said, say aye. I
We've been in
combined.
Canada, eh? I move to adjourn.
That's it, okay.
Second.
Meeting adjourned. Thanks,
Okay,
guys.
Thank you.